Okay, so here we go, sunshine, vitamin D. This is a really important workshop that we go over. I really try, when we do workshops, especially when it comes to health-related stuff, there's a lot of topics out there that you can choose from. I always try and choose the ones that are going to make the biggest impact, the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to your health. The reason we have to do a workshop on sunshine and vitamin D is because most of us have been told what?
Stay out of the sun.
Stay out of the sun, right? We've been told that it's going to kill you, it's going to cause cancer, that you need to cover up. And the reality is that that's not the truth. So we'll skip through a couple slides here. So what we're going to talk about tonight is really the truth behind sunshine, vitamin D, and not just. I mean, there's really two big reasons why that this is important. Sunshine is important. Number one is because sunlight does produce vitamin D. Number two, because of natural light and how that affects sleep issues. So we're going to really kind of hit those two big things tonight. If you guys have questions, again, just put your hands up, stop me, we can answer questions. We'll go through this. Everything that is on here is in the notes for you. I'm going to try and skip through some of this stuff quickly, and then as we get into some of the more important things, we'll slow down a little bit. So here's what I think is interesting. I think that we have to look at sunlight like it's a nutrient, right? If you were to take water out of a person's ecosystem, right, out of their life, what would happen to them? Healthier or sicker? Right, really, really, really quickly. Sunlight is the same thing. I want you to think about sunlight as a nutrient. If you don't get enough nutrients, it's harder for your body to be healthy. Okay, if you don't, in our exercise workshop, I always talk about you have to look at exercise like it's a nutrient. These are things that, sunlight is not something that you add in to try and make you healthy. This is like a baseline thing that your body requires to express life and health. Okay, evidence suggests that if people actually got the amount of sunlight that we're supposed to, that cancer diagnoses would drop by over 200,000 every single year, and deaths from all sorts of diseases would drop by about 63,000. It just shows how deficient we really are. We'll go through some of this in a bit here. Okay. So again, the benefits of sunlight are not just that you're going to look nice with a tan. And by the way, this is why I went to Jamaica about 2 weeks ago. It was just our research and development, right? So I mean, can you imagine a pasty white guy up here talking to you about sunshine? So it was all for you guys. You're welcome. You're welcome. So again, vitamin D production, sunlight allows your body to produce vitamin D, and exposure to natural light. These lights that we're sitting here are not natural light. The wavelengths that we're getting are not natural, and humans are very good now at creating fake environments for our bodies. You guys understand that? We can have lights on, but it's not the same as the sunlight, and this affects our circadian rhythms and chemical balances in the body as your body responds to the environment, and because we're so easily able to change the environment, can cause havoc with things like depression and how we sleep at night, so we're going to cover that today. So again, we're going to take a step back, and I always talk about this whenever we talk about health. Where does health come from?
Inside. Right,
inside. Right. It is when God created our bodies, He gave us what's called an innate intelligence. This is an inborn wisdom. There is nothing that we can do to improve upon the healing and functioning, the wisdom that God put inside of our bodies. Okay. In chiropractic, we call this innate intelligence, and it's a concept that, again, you're born with everything you need. When that sperm and egg come together in utero, 9 months later, this being is formed that God put together, basically, right? And then that baby's born, and then we start to take over, and we do all sorts of medical stuff to it, right? And it's like, man, if the intelligence of that sperm and egg, or even like an acorn or a seed, you put a seed in the ground, as we had. Who did we have here last time? Dean, sorry. My middle name, you think I'd remember. We had Dean here last time talking about planting, right? When you put that plant in the ground, all of the intelligence that whatever that's going to, the corn or the spinach, whatever's the broccoli, whatever's going to be produced is already there. Does that make sense? But you need to give that seed water. You need to give that seed, right? Sunlight doesn't improve upon your body's ability to heal, but your body requires this, okay? So your innate intelligence is responsible for cell healing, for cell functioning, and ultimately, at the very end of the day, that gives you an ability to adapt to your environment. Sickness always comes when the body struggles to adapt to the environment, right? There are factors there. We'll cover in a second, right? So there's 3 reasons we get sick. Number 1 is we have some sort of genetic issue that affects the DNA in our body and how we build proteins. Okay, this is extremely rare. Do you guys think that if you watch TV at all, we blame genetic issues for almost every health issue out there, don't we? And here, why do you think there's so much? The research shows that it's about 2-3% of all of our actual health problems we can boil down to a purely genetic issue. That's like Down syndrome. It doesn't matter what you do lifestyle-wise, that never changes, right? But why do we tell people that it's genetic?
Lets them off the hook.
He lets them off the hook. We feel comfortable because he goes, well, it's genetic. There's nothing I can do about it. It's a load of crap, right? You give me someone for a year who does everything that I say, and you're going to notice magical change in your life. Your DNA doesn't change. The expression of those genes change, certainly. We'll get into tonight. That's why vitamin D is so important. Okay? But this is not an excuse for most of us. Okay? But if you have a genetic issue, that's going to limit your body's ability to adapt to your environment. Okay? Number 2 is a toxic environment. Okay? We put our bodies in an environment that is impossible to adapt to. So for instance, if I take you and put you outside in the middle of winter, right? Your body's going to start to shiver, it's going to try and adapt, but ultimately you're going to freeze to death. Does it make sense? The environment was too harsh for the body to adapt to. Okay? The symptoms that we get in natural situations are good symptoms. That's things like a high blood pressure. High blood pressure always happens in response to stress. Fever, good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
Right? It's a good thing. Okay? Except that I can ask this question to 100 people, and most people are going to say a good thing. But when most people get a fever, what do we do? Well,
We try to fight it.
we try to fight it, right? We treat the symptom. We take an aspirin so we feel better, but you're actually hurting what your body's doing to adapt to the environment. It'd be like somehow taking a medication to stop shivering. Right? It's kind of crazy. Make sense? Okay? The third reason is there's something interfering with your ability to adapt. And that's why you have a nervous system. That's how the innate intelligence of your body works. It uses the nervous system to coordinate every cell of your body. And so when we talk about self-fixation in the office is going to limit your ability to adapt. You can eat good, you can exercise, you can get enough sunshine. Does that make sense? You can have enough vitamin D, but your body cannot control itself and it doesn't work. And so the nice thing about that is genetic issues, can you do anything about?
No.
Right? It's rare, but you can't do anything about it anyway, so don't worry about it. Does that make sense? You can control your environment by changing lifestyle. That's why we're here tonight. Right? So the stuff that we're going to be talking about is going to help improve the environment that the innate intelligence of your body has to adapt to. Okay? And this will also help change, not necessarily neurologically, but how the innate intelligence, how the smart wisdom your body has to express itself in the environment. Okay? Brief history of sunlight, and I'm not going to read this verbatim, but I'll say this. Sunlight used to be like one of the most commonly used treatments for ailments. Okay? Depression, anxiety, craziness, okay? Skin conditions. Like the protocols, if you look back in history records, it was like put them out in the sun for 3 hours, right? For 2 weeks. Like sun exposure was actually used as a treatment for a lot of things. Okay? In the 1930s, that changed a whole lot. Since then, and we'll talk about why, but since then, instead of using it as sun as a treatment, now that's totally flipped, right? And now we're told that it can cause illness. And it's done that. We teach that because we make a ton of money off of the products that vilify the sun. Okay? Here's what happened. In about 1939, this guy named Gerhard Noack, he won the Nobel Prize for developing an antibiotic, right? Kind of this huge groundbreaking chemical that we could give people, and there's no doubt that in world wars and that sort of stuff, antibiotics saved a ton of lives, right? But this started what was called the age of pharmaceutical dominance. Okay, this started with this pill. We thought, man, we can save a ton of lives by giving people this chemical called an antibiotic, right? Penicillin. The problem is that since then, we've gotten extremely good at creating chemicals that can treat symptoms and change physiology. We're winning maybe a couple battles, but we are completely losing the war when it comes to especially in America, because we consume, I think it's 70% of the world's drugs are consumed in this country. We make up, it's like 5%, 1/20th of the world's population consumes 70% of the medication. Okay, so really since then, the result of this way of thinking is that I was talking to a patient earlier today. So many of us have just grown up in this system where whenever we get sick, we just think about not like when a plant gets sick. What do you think about?
Water it.
What else?
Put it in the sun.
Put it in the sun, right? And make sure the soil is okay, right? Does it make sense? That's what you think about. When humans get sick, what do we think about? What drug do I need to give it? right? We don't think about this at all in a, I would argue, in a logical manner. We want to throw drugs at it. And this is how our brains have all been wired. And I was talking to a gal earlier today, as I said, and she was like, my mom is taking all these medications, but she's just scared to get off of them. And that's because we're so wired to think that we depend on this stuff. And I told her, so the funny thing is I'm scared, I'd be scared of going on that. Because that's the way my brain is wired, right? As I look at the human body and study and see what happens in the office, we didn't even have aspirin in our house. That would scare me to take an aspirin. But I know that people are like, oh, it's just an aspirin. But you're interfering with how the body functions, okay? So, really since then, now it's just a mindset thing, and we don't think logically about health anymore. So we use chemicals to treat cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, cancer, etc., 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 except that America has more chronic disease now than any other country in the world. And something has to change, and that's part of our motivation with this, is to get you guys thinking logically about, I'm going to tell you how you're thinking it, when you break it down, you'll see that it's just, the way that we think needs to change, and this will help you as you go forward when it comes to health, okay? There's a lot of money to be made on products and services that nullify the sun. And the sad thing is, it's the same thing with like chemo and radiation. There's very little research. I hate October. Fall's my favorite time of year, but I hate October because it's the pink month, right? And we try and raise all this awareness, which is a joke. We try and raise all this money that goes into research to have chemicals and radiation to fight cancer. And we're not spending a cracking dime on understanding or educating people on how to prevent cancer, right? Because there's very little money. There's no money to be made, in fact, on preventing diseases, right? All the money is made on treatment, and that's where the research goes, okay? So here's what's interesting. There's this guy named Dr. Michael Hollick. He's a professor of medicine and physiology, biophysics. Huge vitamin D guy, but his thing is, he's like, the reason, there's no sun lobby. There's no one out there in Congress lobbying for the benefits of sun. The sun is free, so there's no research going into like the benefits of vitamin D, because you can't patent vitamin D, because you make it every time you're outside, right? And this is why we don't hear a lot about this. We hear about things that tend to make people money, okay? So let's talk about vitamin D a little bit. Technically, vitamin D is not really a vitamin. Vitamins are things that you need to what? You guys know? Ingest. Yeah, they're things that you have to get from your diet or from outside, okay? Technically, your body produces vitamin D, but you have to have certain prerequisites to make vitamin D, and that is obviously sunlight, okay? Vitamin D is actually a hormone, okay? Do you know what the role of a hormone is? Hormones do one thing. What's that? Don't know?
Talk to your brain?
No.
Balance?
No.
Growth.
No. Kind of. Who said growth? A little bit. Here's what they do. A hormone, the job of a hormone is to turn on or off certain segments of your genome to produce proteins, which can help build you. So growth is maybe partly right. So think about it this way. A hormone is like a key. So a janitor in this building is going to have a key to all of these rooms. Does that make sense? He's holding all these hormones. He can open certain doors if he wants, and he can lock certain doors if he wants, okay? Your genome does not change. And in fact, our genome, the human genome, our DNA has not changed since the very first humans they've ever found. It has not changed. It's identical. 10,000 years, however long the first human they found, right? Our genome has not changed. Our gene expression changes all the time. Your genome, what genes are turned on and off change all the time to suit your environment, which is why blaming your health on genetics is so ridiculous, because it has nothing, it's not about your genes, it's about what genes are turned on. Does that make sense? But genes are turned on, and the hormone is the key that will open that part of the DNA to build certain proteins. Does that make sense? It's extremely important. You cannot build things without hormones. Make sense? Your genes get stuck, okay? We call vitamin D a vitamin, though, because for a lot of the year, especially for us poor Minnesotans, guess what? Right? We just aren't getting the prerequisites, which is sunshine, to produce it. So a lot of us have to maybe supplement with vitamin D, and we have to ingest it, which is why they do call it a hormone, or a vitamin. Does that make sense? Okay, and we'll get into actual supplementation in a little bit. Okay? So again, hormones work by turning certain pieces of the DNA on and off, depending on whether they're needed. So do you think they're important? Okay? Anyone know people that have, imbalanced hormones? We see it all the time in our office. Those people are not healthy people, right? They're in a lot of trouble, they're in a lot of hurt, okay? Here's what's interesting about vitamin D. Vitamin D is responsible for locking and unlocking the expression of over 3,000 genes in your body. That's a lot, okay? Has a huge role, and we're going to talk about low vitamin D levels and all of these different things that it can affect, and it's because of its effect on genes, okay? And it changes how you express genes. So, how do we make vitamin D? First, we all know sunshine, okay? Sunlight is, there's a lot of things in sunlight. Part of that spectrum is ultraviolet, okay? There's UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVA and UVB they both cause tanning and they both cause burning, but UVB is mostly what causes tanning. UVA penetrates a little bit deeper into the skin. So UVB is kind of what we're looking at with vitamin D production. That's the important one, okay? So UVB is the wavelength that stimulates vitamin D production. Here's what's interesting, we'll talk about this. Sunscreens block both UVA and UVB. If you look on your bottle, okay, when you put the sunscreen on to protect yourself, you're blocking UVA and UVB. If you block UVB, guess what? Are you producing vitamin D? You're not. SPF 8 sunscreen will reduce vitamin D production by 97.5%. That's only 8. Okay? Now, SPF 15 sunscreen will reduce vitamin D production by 99.9%. So here's the deal. And we're going to talk about burning and how to get safe sun exposure. So I'm not saying just go out and get burnt. What I'm saying is, when we're told to use sunscreen to protect ourselves, right? But when you can go out, you can be outside all day in the sun. If you are putting sunscreen on yourself, you are blocking your own ability to produce vitamin D. You're not getting it. And we can test you get someone who's outside all day, and we can test their levels and they'll be deficient. Okay? Because we block it with sunscreen. The process goes through different steps, and this is kind of boring for some people. It's interesting, we'll talk about this maybe a little bit later, the steps, because it's interesting when it comes to cholesterol. Here's an interesting part though. Vitamin D, so it changes, basically takes cholesterol that's sitting in your skin and it converts it to 125 cholecalciferol. Again, boring stuff, you don't need to know that. Vitamin D3, that D3 sits on your skin for up to 2 to 3 days. Okay, so you're going to go to the beach all day. Let's say you don't use sunscreen, right? You're actually producing vitamin D. You're going to go to the beach and you're going to produce all this vitamin D, and then you're going to go home and do what? Okay, now water's not bad because vitamin D is in oil, but what are you going to use?
Soap.
Soap. And what is soap going to do to the oil? Rinse it off. So you are literally rinsing all of the vitamin D that you just produced off your body. This is another thing that we do that kills us, okay? I'm not saying don't shower. What I'm saying is, honestly, you don't need to soap up every part of your body every day, especially in the summer, right? Wash the parts that need to be washed, okay? But leave your arms, leave your legs, don't soap them every day, right? It's good for your skin to be, have some oil in it, right? We just wash that with soap, but you're washing all that vitamin D, and it takes 2 to 3 days to be absorbed. Okay, it's super important. So there's another tidbit.
So do you gain anything before you shower? I mean...
Yeah, you'll gain a little bit. You'll gain a little bit, but not a whole lot. We'll talk, here's the deal. It takes 20 to 30 minutes of sun exposure to produce 10,000 to 20,000 units of vitamin D, but it takes a couple days to absorb that. Does that make sense? Now, that vitamin D that you absorb goes to the liver, the kidneys, and it gets converted from there into the active hormone form that your body can actually use. Okay? But there's 2 factors here that we'll talk about a little bit later that are important with that, okay? You can overdose on vitamin D orally and by getting sun. But here's what's amazing. The more sun you get, this is why it sits on your skin, right? Because the sunlight itself degrades vitamin D that sits on your skin. So the more that you produce because you're out in the sun, the longer it sits there, the more sun you get, the more that's destroyed. Which means that it's like a feedback loop, so you're never going to get too much. Does it make sense? Nature has, God, right, created this amazing balance. Again, the body's innately intelligent. There's a system in place to keep you healthy. So you can't overdose by just getting sun. It doesn't work that way. You can be out in the sun every day and you'll get the perfect amount that your body requires of vitamin D. Make sense? But it's got to be on there. You got to have it on there to absorb. You with me on that one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tanning, people say, okay, so what's tanning? Tanning is you have melanocytes or cells in your skin basically that absorb, they release a pigment called melatonin. okay? Melanin, sorry, melatonin, we'll get to melatonin in a second, right? But melanin absorbs, the purpose of tanning is that melanin absorbs UVA, so this is another way to protect. The more sunlight you get, the darker you get, the more protection you have from those UV rays. Melanin and tanning is your body's own what?
Sunscreen.
Sunscreen. However, the darker you are, the less vitamin D you produce. Okay? So the more sun you get, this is another way that your body protects you. The more sun you're getting, the darker you're going to be, and the less vitamin D you'll actually produce, but the less UVA that it absorbs it. Okay? This is what accounts for different pigments. Like, so people that are, historically born in Africa have a darker skin than people historically born in Finland. This is where the big problem arises, which I think we get into, the second point on here. That when you take people that have darker pigmented skin and move them, right, to the poles where they're getting less sunlight, or not even the poles, but just latitude away from the equator, right? It gets to Minnesota, right? It's hard. You and I are, the reason we're so pasty is because we don't get as much sunlight, so we need to be whiter to absorb it, right? People that are closer to the equator, historically, the problem is that we have a world where you can travel all over now, and everything gets mixed up, which is great, but this can account for, like, African Americans, the percentage of African Americans that are vitamin D deficient compared to, maybe European Americans, I don't know what you really call it. I heard Caucasian is kind of a racist term, actually the roots are like racist, so I don't get too politically into that. I don't know it's racist here, but you get my point, right? Whiter people, our percentage of vitamin D deficient is lower than African Americans, okay? Because we've taken these dark pigmented people away from where they were getting more direct sunlight, and that causes big issues, okay? And this can also relate for different climates. When you live in again, our industrialized world allows us to move around the country and experience different climates, but when, like an animal, for instance, lives in a certain climate, they adapt to that environment. Does that make sense? If I move to Colorado and live there, my red blood cell count is going to change. It's going to adapt to a higher altitude. Does that make sense? Your body adapts to the environment that you live in. When we can move that around, that causes changes in pigment of the skin. It can affect how we produce vitamin D. People with pale skin, there's some people here with paler skin than others. You have some Italian background, Bev, right? Or is that just your hubby?
My hubby does.
Just your hubby? Right? But even among Caucasians, there are very
fair.
What?
Fair.
Fair, that's a good way to put it. And then more olive colored skin, and even that can make a difference. But people with pale skin generally need only 30 to 60 minutes in the sun per week to produce adequate amount of vitamin D. So it doesn't take a ton, but it takes consistency. And the problem is that this isn't to say all you need is 30 to 60 minutes of sunlight a week, but just to produce amounts of vitamin D. We typically do this. The problem is that we're inside with nothing. And then we go outside in the summer and there's a ton, and that's how we burn, and that can cause issues. So we're getting into that. So, sunlight and skin cancer. This is the big thing, right? I can't be out in the sun because I'm going to get skin cancer. What's that?
Thank you.
For the picture? Yeah. Does sun exposure lead to skin cancer like so many people and organizations have claimed? The answer is not nearly as often or as easily as you've been led to believe. Okay? So we got to cover this because this is important. Here, know this. Long-term, excessive exposure to sunlight can increase non-melanoma skin cancers. Melanoma is a bad one to get because that can spread throughout the body. Okay, non-melanoma. You've had lots of people they've had things removed in their face. Usually they're non-melanoma. It's just a benign form of skin cancer, right? Slow growing or whatever. So it is true that long-term excessive exposure to sunlight can increase the risk of non-melanoma skin cancer. Although regular, moderate, consistent sun exposure is actually less dangerous than intermittent sun exposure. You are better to be in the sun for 30 minutes a day than to do 60 to 90 minutes once a week. That consistency is how you build tanning and protective mechanisms against some of the UVA and UV which can cause damage. Does that make sense? Sunburns can increase the risk of melanoma. Absolutely. Do not get sunburned. That's going to increase your risk. But there is zero evidence that sun exposure without burning increases the risk of melanoma at all. Okay? In fact, most research shows that skin exposure, that sun exposure significantly decreases the risk of melanoma. Okay? We'll get to this a little bit later. Most melanomas occur in places of the body that get what?
No sun.
No sun. Right? It's not the sun that's causing melanoma. And it's what's interesting is that we'll talk about how important vitamin D is in the immune system. The reality is that when you don't get enough sun, you make it harder for your body to fight cancer. Okay? So the moral of the story is moderate, consistent, safe sun exposure. We'll talk about how to get that. It actually protects you against skin cancer. Okay? You are more than 4 times more likely to die of food poisoning and 653 times more likely to be killed by medical system, just to put things in perspective, okay? Prescribed by a medical doctor than you are to die of cancer due to getting sun. Right? And just so you guys know, did you guys see the study that came out beginning of May? British Medical Journal published this. In America, heart disease, 600,000, cancer, 585, the 3rd most common cause of death. Medical error.
Oh, delicious.
Right? 251K. You should listen to the interview. Extremely conservative estimates. Right? So this is important to keep in mind when you have the experts. And this is, I'm not against medical doctors. The problem is most of this is skewed by medical doctors that just say what they've been taught, and they're telling you to stay out of the sun, but their own system is the 3rd leading cause of death. Right? It to me is like the kettle calling, or the, what's the expression? Pot calling kettle black. Like, we're not experts in health in that system. You know what I'm saying? We have to understand all this. So let's put all that in balance. Okay? Sunlight reduces cancer. When you have adequate vitamin D levels, you'll have less cancer. There's 4 reasons. Number 1, vitamin D increases cell apoptosis. Cell apoptosis is a scientific way of saying cell suicide. When a cell gets old and sick and deformed, there are mechanisms inside that cell that cause that cell to basically explode so that it doesn't grow abnormally. Right? So if there's any genetic issues, the cell goes, oh, I'm out of here, I'm done, see you later. Right? Otherwise that cell can keep going. When you have adequate vitamin D levels, the rate at which abnormal cells go through cell apoptosis, cell suicide, is increased. Your cells will kill themselves better if they're sick, if you have adequate vitamin D levels. Okay? Cancer comes from what?
6 cells.
Abnormal cells, 6 cells, exactly. Okay? Reducing metastasis and proliferation. Metastasis is spreading of cancer from one part of the body to another. Proliferation is the growth. Right? You can have a cancer cell that shows up in your liver, how that cancer cell grows, right? Both of those are shown when you have higher vitamin D levels. Your rate of metastasis and your rate of proliferation of those secondary tumor sites is decreased. Okay? Super important. Inducing cell differentiation. One of the problems with cancer cells is that they don't, like every cell in your body comes from the same one cell. So every cell in your body is genetically identical, right? But what genes are turned on, like my heart cell genes, the genes that are expressed in my heart cells are very different than my kidney cells. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay? Because they have different functions. Cancer cells they lack that cell differentiation. Vitamin D, because it affects gene expression, it improves the expression of gene. And when you have proper differentiation, when the cell is expressing genes correctly, it's not a cancer cell. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay? So it helps to promote gene expression and reduces angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is the formation of new blood vessels. The one thing that cancer cells are very, very, very good at doing, especially fast-growing ones, is building their own blood supply. Okay? Cancer cells need blood, oxygen, and sugar. Okay? And blood brings both of those. Right? And that's why they require them. When you have adequate levels of vitamin D, you hamper cancer cells' ability to create new blood vessels for themselves, which is their fuel. Does that make sense? These are 4 reasons, right, that vitamin D, and this is, again, having adequate vitamin D levels. So you can see how this would even affect things like skin cancer. Right? Skin cancer is, all of these things are happening in skin cancer. Your vitamin D levels are, we always talk about this when it comes to cancer. The question isn't whether you're going to build cancer cells or not, right? We get that now. I think we've talked, you guys have come to a lot of our same workshops, we talk about that all the time. research shows that we're producing 1,000 to 10,000 cancer cells in our body every single day, right? That's not why we get cancer. Like, it's going to happen. It's when we get cancer when we stop killing, right? We blame cancer on the environment. It's not the environment, it's you. It's me. We don't become a cancer killer. When you lay down, cancer will grow. And when I say lay down, I mean stop fighting, right? And so the focus for cancer, this is what I think is so ridiculous about let's raise money to kill the cancer, but what's stopping the cancer from reforming, right? The research has to go into you getting healthier, right? How do we produce a healthier society? And that's how you fight cancer. You become a cancer killer, okay? So get some sun, you're becoming a cancer killer. Every time you land on the beach with safe, consistent, moderate sun exposure, right? Fight cancer cells, fight cancer cells, fight cancer cells. Okay, sounds good, Dr. Jeff. That is not a self-portrait, obviously. Let's see some real-life stats. So this chart is from a book called Dark Deception, and it's all the research is in there. It's really interesting when you look at all these studies. This is a generalized, basically this is cancer rate per 100,000 people, okay? So you can look at like degrees latitude. They went all around the world and look at the studies. The further away, this is close to the equator, this is further away. The further away you get from the equator, what happens to cancer rates? Right, it grows. Okay, this is only one part of the equation. Certainly, there's lots of other things that are going to impact this. This isn't the
North and south or just north?
both. Doesn't matter. Degrees away from the equator, right? Doesn't matter which way you go. So other types of cancer, melanoma. Melanoma is seen far more often in those who do not receive regular sunlight than those that do. Again, this is an interesting study. There was a big study done on Navy ships, and what they found is that melanoma happened higher in people that were below decks. Means they were getting what? Very little sun than people who were actually working on the decks. Okay, who were exposed to the sun all the time. It's again, we talked about this. It's important to note that when melanomas occur, they do so in parts of the body that typically get very little sun exposure. Okay. Melanoma is actually increasing among those who regularly use sunscreen. Okay, breast cancer. Each year, more than 200,000 women are diagnosed with breast cancer in the U.S. More than 40,000 will die from it. Recent report based on findings from 1996 and 2004 indicates that proper vitamin D levels can reduce the risk of breast cancer by as much as 50%. Fewer breast cancer in Mediterranean countries that are closer to the equator. Again, I'm not saying that sunshine vitamin D is the only factor into this. I am not a believer in one cause. It boils down to lifestyle and your ability to adapt in all areas. There's lots of other things that the Mediterraneans do correctly, but sun is one of them. Not only are they close to the equator, but it's like beautiful there all the time.